Sorry.
Oh, welcome, everyone. I don't know if we have any public attendees, but nevertheless, welcome everyone to the ASCC meeting of September 12th, 2022. We are in a hybrid format, so some of you will be appearing on our big screen. I hope that you can see and hear us that are in the schoolhouse. I'll start by inviting any members of the public who would like to address us to raise your hands virtually and get Laura's attention, and you're welcome to address us on any topic that is not on our agenda this evening. Or do you have anyone?
There are no attendees in the Zoom world. And for the record, there are no attendees in the schoolhouse.
Right. Then we'll move right along to new business. And our first item of new business is to accept the memorandum to commissioners and committees on text and email policy. And this relates to the Brown Act. We have a presentation from Town Attorney Carsel.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. This will be a quick item. The purpose of this item is to inform the Commission about a new texting and communication policy that was adopted by the Town Council, which is applicable to all commissions and committee members in addition to the Town Council. So we are bringing forward this policy to all boards and commissions as they begin to meet in the year. As this is related to a lawsuit which you have probably heard about. It was filed against the town asserting that the texting and emailing amongst committee members during a public meeting violates the Brown Act. Our office analyzed the legal issue, and our opinion is that that type of communication does not violate the Brown Act, provided that the communication thread does not involve a quorum of committee or commission members. And a quorum can vary depending on how many members are on the particular body. Nevertheless, it is a practice that with remote meetings, many public officials are starting to examine, and there is a public sentiment out there that texting and emailing while you are in a committee meeting draws your attention away from the substance of the committee business and is sometimes perceived as disrespectful to the public. And so it is something that many people discourage as a matter of policy. However, I do want to emphasize that as long as committee members or legislative body members are texting or communicating with less than a quorum, we do not believe that it violates the Brown Act. With that backdrop, the council had a decision to make whether to fight this lawsuit as a matter of principle and spend significant resources doing so, or whether to settle the lawsuit via a stipulated judgment that would adhere to a practice of not texting or communicating during public meetings. So the council decided to take the latter approach and to settle the lawsuit because they felt that this was a important policy, and that it does serve the public good to prohibit and regulate texting and emailing during public meetings. So on August 1st, the town council adopted the policy, which is attached to your staff report. It prohibits private email or text communications among commission and committee members during public meetings. I do want to say that it was largely drafted by the plaintiff's lawyers. And so we did not have a lot of ability to edit the policy for clarity and for usability. It's a little hard to follow. And so that's another reason why we are appearing at some of the committee meetings and are here to answer questions about the policy and explain the intent behind it. The basic intent behind the policy, of course, is to prevent email communications amongst committee and commission members only. There is also a clause that prohibits direct email and text communications with what is called third-party consultants. We asked the plaintiffs to define third-party consultants, and they did not want to do that as part of this stipulation. So we have interpreted a third-party consultant as somebody that is hired by typically the town to perform some type of service for the town. And so if a paid consultant were appearing on behalf of the town and rendering an opinion or providing a staff report to the committee, you would not be permitted to communicate privately via electronic device with that particular consultant under this local policy. It is important to note that the policy does not apply to communications between staff members. So if you had a question about an agenda item, or if you wanted to rearrange the agenda order, or if you had a question about historical practices during the meeting and you didn't want to ask it out loud, you could raise that question via a text or an email to a staff person or to the town attorney. Those are the two exceptions to this policy. The policy is also directed at substantive communications. And so substantive communications include the type of business that is before the actual body. So it might vary depending on which body is being referred to. The ASCC's scope of business as way of example is very different than, say, Park and Recreation or Conservation Committee. But in general, the intent is not to have substantive conversations about the type of business that comes before your individual community, your individual committee. You can certainly have logistical communications. So if there's an internet problem, if you're going to be late to a meeting, that type of thing, you can text the chair and inform them of that. But again, the overall intent of this policy is that committee and commission members should not be texting or emailing during a public meeting. This policy only applies to the conduct during a public meeting. The Brown Act, of course, governs your conduct outside of meetings. And so the standard Brown Act rules that prohibit you from communicating either in person or by phone or electronically with a quorum still apply. And we will be having some Brown Act training on those issues coming up. The serial meetings are always a difficult sort of counterintuitive principle. And so we will discuss that in further depth at our Brown Act training. But for now, I just wanted to bring this particular policy to you. And the recommendation that we have is for you to accept this memo to verify that you have received the policy. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carol. What is the recommended action? Do we need to vote on this to accept the policy?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So with that, commissioners, do you have questions? Jane, I think you might have wanted to add a comment or ask a question.
I wanted to add a comment, but should we see if
Yes.
Al
Al,
has a-
Al, do you have any questions?
No question. Well, I guess, yeah, if a question, what if a member of the public who's attending the meeting were to text us? Should we just ignore the text, or it doesn't cover that situation?
That's a very good question. So when we were drafting the policy, we were concerned that that you don't want to cut off the public members' ability to petition the government, that they have a constitutional right to communicate with government officials. And so our position was that it would not be constitutional to prohibit public members from contacting public officials. And so the stipulation does allow for that. A public member may contact a public official during a meeting, and it would not be a violation of this policy. That said, it's much easier to administer, a binary policy. And so, our recommendation is just don't text or email during meetings.
Okay.
Period.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
It's an appropriate response to a texted message from a member of the public would be to read it out loud.
Yes.
And that way it's shared with everyone instead of being a sort of sub rosa communication.
Yes.
could be
And I will also say that with the ASCC, really more than any other commission or committee, because you typically are handling quasi judicial matters where you need to decide, very particular, adjudicate particular facts. You want to make sure that all of the information that you have that goes into your decision making is a matter of public record. And so you don't want to have private communications with anyone. You should disclose all communications that you have when it comes to your quasi-judicial decision making.
Good point.
Okay.
So Al, any other questions?
No other questions.
Jane,
I have no questions.
no
but I have-
questions? If you wanted to put something on the record as a comment, this would probably be a good time.
All right then, I will. I wanted to say that I personally found this lawsuit against the town frivolous and morally repugnant, but I understand that the town had to concede to the plaintiffs to prevent the waste of further resources, which means I have no option but to accept the memo on text and email policy as written.
That's it.
Through the chair, we should take public comment as well.
Thank you. If that concludes commissioner questions and comments, then I'll open this item for public comment and invite any members of the public who are attending to raise your hand via Zoom and ask to be recognized by Laura to offer your comments.
And we have 3 attendees at this time, and we have 1 hand up right now, and it's a phone number ending in 7562.
7562, you're on the air.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you very much. This is Caroline Bertongen. Thank you for asking more details about this new ordinance. I hope you understand it's very difficult for the public to get in touch with you. If you remember 3 years ago, your names were advertised. Even a few years back, we knew where you lived. Now this is all not disclosed anymore. And we have, on several occasions, we have mentioned that we don't even know if our communication reaches you. And it's really embarrassing to constantly ask at oral communication, did you receive it? Still our questions are not being answered. And I'm not blaming you. This is really paid staff that should answer. We have about 2 pages of answered questions. And so what happened, for instance, at the last planning commission, there was an answer from the planning director, and I did not agree with it. And I had no, because it was inaccurate. And so there should be a chance for the public to comment on that after paid staff has given an answer that was inaccurate. So thank you for taking my comments. We love this community. And so we will do everything to restore it. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Caroline. Is there anyone else, Laura, who'd like to speak?
There are no other hands up, and for the record, there are no members of the public in the room that wish to speak.
Great. I'll close the public comment section and return to the commission for a vote to accept the new policy regarding text and email communications during meetings. Al, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I move that we accept the new policy as written.
Thank you. Jane,
Reluctantly, yes.
second.
Second.
All right. Let's take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Through the chair, I'd like to do a roll call vote since we're in two different places to make sure that we've got
Very
it
good.
reflected on the record. Commissioner Sill,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
and Chair Ross.
Aye.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, that concludes item 1 of new business. And Kara, thank you very much.
Thank
for
you.
presenting it,
Thank you, Cara.
and have a good evening. All right. Now we'll move to item 2 of new business. Excuse me. And this is an architectural review of an application for an addition and remodeling to an existing residence. The residence is at 658 Westridge Drive, and the property owner is Riskin. We have Jake Garcia with us this evening to make the presentation. Laura, did you have any introductory comments before Jake begins?
I just want to make sure all members of the applicant team are present as panelists. Everybody here, everybody's ready?
Yes, this is Dan, Naima, and Maya.
Maybe Maya, say hi.
Okay, great.
Everyone.
Over to Jake for the presentation.
Thank you. Jake, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Chair and Commission. The item before you tonight is a request for an architectural design review for an addition remodel of an existing main residence at 658 Westridge. This 117,612 square foot lot is zoned residential estate and is a corner lot with a primary access along Westridge Drive. The property is surrounded by single-family residential located in the same zoning district, and the lot is sloped down from the road with an average slope of 25.7%. There's a 15-foot bridle trail easement at the front of the property along Westridge Road. There is also an existing 4,415 square foot, 2-story residence on site with an attached garage, a detached ADU, a driveway, a gravel parking area near the ADU, retaining walls, minimal site paths, and multiple wood fences downslope at the rear of the property. The applicant is proposing to construct an 1,117 square foot addition and remodel the interior space to reconfigure the floor plan layout on the upper first floor and lower basement floor. The project also proposes changes to the exterior of the home with proposed changes to transition from a gable roof to a more modern parapet roof. The overall building height will increase by 5 feet at its highest point and varies in height along the ridge of the house. In addition, exterior materials are to be revised to consist of non-combustible materials that consisting of natural colors consistent with the town's design guidelines. Minimal changes will be made to the existing impervious surfaces and includes an overall reduction of impervious surfaces near the existing driveway by a total of 439 square feet. There is no work proposed in the trail easement There are no significant trees proposed for removal. No new landscape plantings are proposed, nor does this project trigger the need for a site development permit. The proposed plans for addition and remodel to an existing main residence meets all the zoning requirements, including setback requirements. Oop, and there's the project data. Starting first with the area of addition, here's a diagram demonstrating the existing upper and lower floor building footprint in red, and proposed area of addition indicated by the hatched areas. As you can see, the floor area addition is primarily focused at the front left of the building, with 2 small areas being added at the rear of the building. These next 2 slides show the existing and proposed floor plans for the upper level, as well as the lower level. Moving on to the elevations. The above elevation shows the existing residence, and the below is the proposed elevations. The project includes remodel of the exterior of the building, and as you'll see, the roof lines and walls and exterior materials have all changed. And this would be the front elevation. Here we have the left elevation, the right elevation, and the rear elevation. The proposed materials and colors are to meet the town's requirements for light reflectivity and present a natural color palette. Proposed building siding is to include a medium stucco in cinder color, a light stucco in gray matter color, fortress cladding composite panels in a tiger cove color. The windows are to be in a dark bronze color. Metal fascia and exterior doors are to be in a martin ash color, and roofing is to consist of multiple materials, including a metal standing seam roof in a deep charcoal color, and a TPO roofing in a mule hide slate gray color or a firestone charcoal color. This slide demonstrates the existing proposed impervious surface, and within the red box is the area of impervious surface proposed for removal. New impervious surface is proposed at the front of the garage and at the front entrance, indicated on this site plan in what looks like black. As I had mentioned earlier, there's an overall decrease in impervious surface by 439 square feet. Proposed exterior and landscape lighting is identified here. All fixtures are compliant with the municipal code, and staff recommended reduction of recessed lighting, and the applicant responded to staff's request by removing multiple light fixtures at the rear of the residence to be more consistent with the town's design guidelines. There is no other proposed site lighting. That is just this lighting here. There's existing lighting on the ADU that is proposed to remain. There are no changes to the ADU. This slide shows the neighborhood outreach and public notice done for this project. The applicants conducted their own public outreach to adjacent neighbors, and no concerns are raised. And to date, no comments have been received by staff. This is the end of staff presentation. Both staff and the applicant team are available for any questions by the ASCC. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Al, let's start with you. Do you have questions?
No questions. It was a good presentation, and we got a lot of information this afternoon. So I think I understand it pretty well. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Jane, do you have questions for Jake?
Well, there was one that Al raised this afternoon about the 50-foot setback at the back of the building, at the back of the building instead of the front. Is that going to be corrected?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. The plans do show a front setback of 20 feet and a rear setback of 50 feet. The plans will be corrected in the building permit phase to switch those so that there is a 50-foot front setback from West Ridge Road and a 20-foot rear setback. This is according to its zoning district and was overlooked in the review process.
And did the applicant follow all your lighting recommendations for reduction, or were there any that were left?
The only comment that was made was for a reduction, and they did reduce it by 4 lights.
Thank you. No other questions.
Thank you, Jane. And Jake, just to follow up on that last question of Jane's, on the graphic that you showed, are the lights that are being removed the ones that are clouded? The group
That is correct, and I'm happy to show them again if you'd like,
just-
but
for-
that is the area of reduction.
Yeah, if you'd share that just for a moment. So I think-
Absolutely. So here at the rear of the residence, under the overhang, there were approximately 4, I believe it's 4 more lights that were proposed in this area, and they have since been reduced.
So does this graphic display the remaining lights or removed lights?
This displays the proposed lights to remain.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're
I
welcome.
don't have any other questions for you. So now is the time for, been a while since I've done this live, but for the applicant to present any information they would like us to consider. We did have a field meeting on site at 3:30 this afternoon. There was one member of the public in attendance. We got a good presentation and a tour of the site at that time. But for the sake of any audience members that are zooming in, I think it would be useful to get at least a bit of that presentation from the applicant. So the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Marcy Riskin. I'm the architect for the project. And we'd like to thank you for considering this project today and for meeting us on site earlier. So the project that we propose is a personal home. It's not a spec home. I just wanted to note that for Dan and Naima and their young family. We've attempted to really take into consideration all of the town of Portola Valley's rules, but also to make a house that is updated, adds to their own property values, but also the property values of the surrounding neighbors. And we're going for more modern design, something that's more livable for current day occupants. And I just want to note that the heights that we're looking at are actually, we've reached the peak height that we're allowed, but that's only in one small area. Otherwise, we've really modulated the heights to try to create really what a building that's architecture rather than just a house. And it's a more, I guess compared to the 1955 with an 80s remodel that we're replacing, we hope the style and design are more compatible with the other construction in the area. The owners have discussed the project with their neighbors, which may be why they're not there. And they're all very supportive of it. We are within the allowable square footage, which is actually quite limited due to the steep slope of the lot. So it means that this house will always be a modest house for the lot size. It also means that the views of the house from neighboring houses are far and long views. Nobody's really seeing this house. Close up, definitely. And very few in the neighborhood will see this house at all. The height of the house is currently a 1-story at street level, and then from the rear it's 2-story, and we're maintaining that. We're not trying for a 2-story house where it isn't already 2-story. So it'll continue to be a 1-story house at the street and have minimal disruption of the street frontage. We're not removing any trees, no oaks, and the driveway remains the same. And if you have any other questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Jane, do you have any questions for the architect?
No, I don't have any further.
Great, thank you. And Al, how about you?
No questions.
I don't have any questions that weren't answered at the site. As we were leaving, a few people observed that there is some invasive weed growth that would be important to remove during the first phase of the project before it has a chance to go to seed in the spring. And it's principally the main offender is called Ditrichia. It's sometimes called stinkweed, I think is a common name for it. It's easily identified. There isn't a great deal on the site, but it propagates very easily, especially in disturbed soil. So I just wanted to, I guess, put out there a question of whether you, the applicant, feel it's feasible to do that weed removal effort.
Yeah, we appreciate it being noticed and we're happy to address it.
Thank you. I don't, like I said, I don't have any other questions. So let's open the public hearing and invite members of the public who want to address us on this agenda item to raise their hands, get Laura's attention, and be recognized to speak.
And we have a hand up from Caroline Vertonghen.
Caroline, go ahead. You may be muted.
My
There you are.
apologies, that was a previous hand. Sorry about that.
Okay. No other comments? No other members of the public?
No, there's a total of 3 members of the public on Zoom, and I do not see any other hands. And the only person in the chambers here in the old schoolhouse is Commissioner Tart from the Planning Commission. So we do not have any public comments here either.
Great. Thank you, Laura. All right, we'll return to commission members for discussion and potentially for motion making. Jane, would you like to begin?
Yes, I was glad that the lights have been reduced at the doorway after we talked to the planners. That's a good news. And that there's going to be no path lighting. To go back to Dave's comment, I was going to ask that you speak to your gardening people to pay particular attention to the removal of invasives such as Ditrichia and star thistles. Ditrichia is particularly noxious, thrives on disturbed soil, and it's much easier to remove now than when it spreads. I thought it was a very thoughtful and considered renovation and rebuild that will not impact the neighbours particularly. And I would like the owners to continue to talk with the neighbours in the future regarding construction vehicles and non-blocking of neighbour access and egress as they did this afternoon. It was good that you are all happy to talk to each other, which helps. I also like the colour board. So that was all my comments.
Thank you, Jane. Al, comments?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to see that the owners have decided to remodel rather than tear the structure down. It's nice to see some, and then I think it's a beautiful plan too, to take what's there now and turn it into a very modern feeling, very attractive new home. So I think great choices have been made. I think the proposed color board and materials are very good choices. I think that ultimately you probably will want to do something with the back deck and with some landscaping. And at that point, I think that it'll be good to run it by us again. Those are things that we look at a lot. And I think that it will be important to look at those. But with what's been presented today, I think it's a great proposal. I mean, it's a super lot. I love the native feel in the backyard and the way that's just being left completely untouched. And there's a lot of little things that I think are very good choices. I like that there's no lights on the driveway. I mean, I think the horse fencing in the back is very attractive. It's there's just a lot of good things about the lot, and the proposal. So yeah, and I think that the lighting plan is acceptable. Do I have any other things? Nope. I think that's it. I think it's an excellent proposal.
Great, thank you all. Well, I agree with my fellow commissioners. It's a very thoughtful design. It takes good advantage of the structure that's there and the site conditions. As noted at the field meeting, even with a slightly increased height, the top of the building is still below the street level on West Main, which makes it hard to see. In fact, I didn't see it as I drove past it this afternoon. The site has some other fortunate characteristics. One of them is a great deal of mature screening on the site and around the neighborhood in general. And the combination of the mature screening and the location and scope of the addition means that there will be very, very little impact, if any, on the most immediate neighbors. It appeared that some very distant neighbors might have a view of some portions of the project, but I don't think it will be a significant change. So I really like this project. I think the color palette is excellent, and I don't have any trouble with the required findings listed in the staff report. So with that being said, if no one else has any additional comments, I'd like to ask someone to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditions of approval for the addition remodel of 658 Westridge Riskin residence as shown in our packet.
Great, thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, I do have one question for the motion maker and the seconder that I forgot to bring up a moment ago. And that is the question of the possible renovation or replacement of the existing deck and landscaping. I think if those were standalone items applied for, say, some years down the road, it probably would not naturally come before the ASCC. But my question is, would you be willing to add a condition to the staff report or to the motion that if the landscaping and deck are added to this project and this permit at some point in the future, that we could limit the ASCC review to 1 or 2 members rather than having them come over back to the full commission?
Could we ask Laura Russell what a good time scale for that would be to add to the motion? If, say, it came within a year or
I would guess it would be before the final inspection, whenever that happens.
Yeah, we talked about a couple of different options of how they may wish to phase the deck and the landscaping. And my understanding from the commissioners is that you want to maintain flexibility for them and not require them to come back before the full commission for the deck and landscaping. Am I getting the intent right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so if that's the intent, I would say that we could add a condition that if the applicant pursues replacement of the rear deck and rear landscaping prior to the building permit being finalized, then those changes could be reviewed by, and you could decide 1 or 2 members of the ASCC.
I would be comfortable with 1, but I'm open to suggestion.
I'm fine with that.
I'll agree with you too.
You made the motion. So
All right.
are you comfortable with 1?
Yes, I'm comfortable with 1. Do I need to repeat the motion?
I don't think so, but we'll call this an amendment to the original motion, if that's all right, by staff.
Yeah, so the motion maker should just say that you agree with that change to the motion.
Okay, I agree with the change to the original motion to include the deck and landscaping plan to come through before the final building permit.
Be reviewed by a single.
Be reviewed by
ASCC
one
member.
person.
Yes,
from
not-
the
Not at a full
ASCC.
formal meeting. Great, thank you, Jane. All right, with that amendment, let's take a vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Through the chair, yeah, I would
yes,
like
thank
to,
you,
yeah.
Laura.
I would like
Please
to
go
do
ahead and
roll
do a
call
roll call.
votes when we're in this mix setup, so everyone knows. Commissioner Sill,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
and Chair Ross.
Aye. Thank you, Laura. I'll figure that out soon.
Thank you.
All right. Congratulations. And
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
proceeding with your project.
We appreciate all the support from the commission and quite frankly, from the neighbors and from Jake, who's been absolutely amazing.
Good to hear.
Yes, thank you for that feedback. Okay, let's move on to commission, staff, committee reports and recommendations. Item 3 on our agenda is commission reports. And it's been a while since we've had an ASCC meeting. I'm sure there have been some commissioner activity during that time, but
The only thing I remember recently is I had an owner of a property contact me because they needed to know how they'd made mistakes when landscaping a garden into a trail. And so basically I spoke to Howard Young at the town, and we agreed that the best thing to do was for that owner to apply for a retrospective trail easement, trail adaptation, so that they bring it back to the original trail and concur with the town's recommendations. It did transpire that there had been 2 members of the public who had noticed these changes and complained to the town. So that was why it all started in the first place. But hopefully that's progressing with Howard. But it wasn't an official ASCC query. It was just, but that was the only thing that I remember doing in the last several months.
right,
So I could be.
that's fine. Thank you, Jake.
Right.
Al, have you had any activity as a commissioner?
I have. On July 18th, I was at 40 Firethorn and just finalizing the placement of the 4th screening oak that was part of the plans for that property. And that went fine, no issues. And then on August 22nd, I reviewed a set of changes to 300 Alamos, and it covered some plantings that we had asked for them to be made less linear, and they did that. And then they updated their lighting plan, and it was a dramatic reduction of the landscape lighting. I think over half the fixtures were removed. So it was a very good improvement to the plan. So those are the 2 things that I've worked on.
300, number 300.
Right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, 300 was one that came through ASCC and then went up to Planning Commission because they had a significant amount of grading for their site development permit. I don't know if you weren't here for that
I think I might have missed
meeting,
that.
Jane. Yeah, that one was very interesting because there were trees on the adjacent property or on the property that provided screening for the adjacent property, but they were identified as potentially having a higher fire danger. And so there was discussion about whether those trees should be removed or not. And the Planning Commission, after deliberation, decided that it should be left up to the property owner whether to remove them or not, but that they should consult with the Conservation Committee and the Woodside Fire Protection District before making their decision. So the homeowner made those consultations, talked to conservation and Woodside Fire, and elected to remove the trees because of the potential fire danger. And they're going to be working on an appropriate kind of replanting for that. So that's kind of it's an interesting case that these things are starting to become up, in front of us as we think about tree removal in a different way. So
Right.
I also have an update for Megan. So Commissioner Cope worked with us on the approval of a staff discretionary level ADU. And that was hold on a second, on September 7th, and it was at 325 Willowbrook. And it was an application to add an ADU over an existing garage. So their story pole's probably still up because we just approved that. And so we went out into the field, and as you recall, we haven't done very many of these staff discretionary reviews, but the way that the code is written is that the planning director has the authority to approve in consultation with an ASCC member. And so that was a very productive discussion and review. We did receive some public comments, and Megan reviewed those. And Megan and I agreed on the approval, and Megan made recommendations for reduction in lighting, which the applicant was happy to receive. And so that application is formally in the appeal period, but the appeal period is almost up, and then they'll be able to go forward with their building permit for that project. So that's the update since Megan's not here this evening.
Great, thank you for that. I had no formal commission work that I recall since our last meeting. I will note that I was contacted in July by a neighbor to one of our approved projects who was concerned about changes to their view of the project that we approved. Seeking any assistance or advice that the ASCC might be able to provide. And I let her know, this member of the public, our jurisdiction, our remit did not involve reopening items that were disposed of by us. She indicated she had already filed an appeal with the Planning Commission. And I let her know that as far as I knew, that was the only venue, apart from just talking to the neighbors, but the only venue for changing an approved project. And that was my final communication with the neighbor. So that's the only ASCC related work that I've done in the last couple of months. All right. I think that covers commission reports. Let's move on to, well, actually, before we do that, let me open the public comment portion and ask any members of the public who would like to comment on item 3 to do so now.
We have one member of the public currently in attendance, and they do not have their hand up.
Okay, then I'll close that item, move on to item 4, staff report. And Laura, that would be you.
Just a couple of things for you. The project at 1195 Westridge was approved by the ASCC, was appealed up to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission upheld the ASCC's decision, and it's been further appealed up to the Town Council. And we expect that to go to council on the 28th of this month for the council to hear that appeal. So I'll let you know the outcome of that when we have that meeting. Related to the housing element, just a couple of updates because I know you received questions from your friends and neighbors. The housing element is with the state right now for their first review. We expect their first comments about October 10th. We expect to have a phone call with their staff. Although they will give us a lot of feedback is what's been happening for other jurisdictions. And then we'll reconvene the ad hoc housing element committee to discuss those comments that are coming forward. And then we're going to be going into a time frame of working on zoning code amendments and final changes to the housing element in anticipation of adopting everything by the end of January. That's the goal. So I wanted the ASCC to know that the way we have the zoning code amendment structured right now is to start with very general zoning code amendments. So think of the most basic things like setback and height and floor area. And those changes will rest primarily with the Planning Commission's discussion because the time frame is very tight for us to complete these by January. And then after that, in early 2023, we're going to come back with some more refined development standards. And this is where the ASCC will come in to help participate with those municipal code amendments. So it'll be things like designing the objective design standards that will be within the code for the new type of development for multifamily or mixed use development that's coming into town. And we're phasing it that way because of the way that the state law is written. So I'll keep you updated as we go through this. And you're welcome to engage as members of the public, but I don't think we'll bring that first phase to the ASCC for the code amendments. But I think that second phase will come to the ASCC. Then you've heard the community talking a lot about ADUs and junior ADUs and how that fits into the town's housing plans. And so Vice Mayor Wernicott is bringing forward to the council a program that she's termed an ADU ambassador program. And so there's a colleagues memo on the agenda for the meeting this Wednesday night for the council meeting to propose this program where 2 residents would be selected to help get out communications related to ADUs and help get out the word for a community-wide survey. And so we're going to be putting a survey forward if the council wishes to do so, to get some of the data that the Housing Element Committee and the public has been asking for so that we can structure programs and think about our decision-making as we go forward. So if you're interested in that topic, take a look at the agenda packet that's available now. Tune into the meeting, or you can always watch it back on Zoom if you want to hear about that. So I'll keep the ASCC updated on kind of those high level things as we move through those items. And then it's been an interesting time period for ASCC. We haven't had to meet a lot, but our staff has still been very busy, taking lots of inquiries and doing lots of initial work. It's just the applications are sort of grouped together. So I'll let you know what's upcoming when we get to that point. We do have, like, for example, there's initial inquiries and people that may be serious about doing SB 9 lot splits. And so those are not something that would come before the ASCC, but I think it's something that everyone will be interested in to understand how some of these state laws are evolving. So I'll try to give you some updates on those things as well. And then also not directly within your purview, but just so that you stay informed, the safety element, we are getting to the point where we're soon going to have a draft of the safety element that we can release to the public. And then the committees are going to have an opportunity to spend some time with the safety element. So we'll be putting out a schedule related to that shortly over the next couple weeks so people know what to expect. And then in the category of good news, you know that our senior planner, Adrienne Smith, has been out on maternity leave and she's wrapping up that leave. She'll be back part-time in the end of October and she'll be back full-time in November. And she'll still be working largely on the housing element and the safety element, but you'll start seeing her at ASCC. We're going to start training her in to oversee more ASCC projects so that ultimately you'll be seeing her instead of me most of the time for ASCC meetings. So that's coming up. Wanted to let people know that that's happening. And then also we have advertised and gone through a recruitment for a new technician position in the planning and building department. And we have an offer out to a candidate. And so I am very optimistic that they will accept the position. So it is a net new technician position that reflects the level of application rates and how many applications and how much work there is going on in the planning and building department for the last couple of years. So hopefully I'll have a great announcement to share with you. And if they accept the job, you'll probably be seeing some of them around as well. They're very interested in getting trained up about how this discretionary process works. And you might see them in the background and doing some logistics. And there'll be another contact person for you in the office in addition to Cheryl. Carol and Cheyenne. It's a joke, right? That we always combine their two names.
Right.
So hopefully another contact person in addition to Cheyenne. So that's the updates from staff. I'm happy to take any questions from you.
Thank you, Laura. Al, do you have any questions for Laura about any of those items?
I do not.
Jane?
No, I don't have any questions. I'd just like to say how busy you sound.
I did have one comment to offer about the sort of ADU processing stuff. And I know that Sarah is working on this and I could just direct this to her, but I'm aware that in some jurisdictions where ADUs, like probably everywhere, are getting more and more popular, that planning and building departments have set aside dedicated office hours just to deal with ADU questions from either applicants or contractors or architects, because the process seems to change on a regular basis. The requirements change on a regular basis. The permissions change on a regular basis. And I know that some jurisdictions have responded by saying Monday morning from 10 o'clock to noon is all about ADUs. So bring us your questions and to the counter and we can. So just an idea.
That's great feedback. Thank you. We're working on very similar things to that. And so in the housing element, we do have a program, for example, to create office hours with our technical experts, including the town geologist and the building official.
That's right.
So not just a planner, but to be able to ask some of those more specialized questions at a set time in an office hours type format. So appreciate that. It makes me feel like we're going in the right direction.
Yep.
So thank you.
Sounds like it. I also wanted to ask a couple of other questions. One is, I'm aware that there is some process going on to review this year's adopted fire hardening building codes. And I'm just curious about the time frame for that. I haven't seen much discussion in public areas about this, but for people who are concerned, for example, about the options and availability of decking material, there may be a great deal of interest out there in this process. Can you give us a sort of overall time frame for this, and if I'm correct that there is such a review going on?
Yes, I can give you the high level on this. Our consultant building official is working on the details in consultation with the fire marshal. And so this year is the normal update to the building code. So every 3 years, there's an update to the building code. And the town council has been wanting to do an update to our green building ordinance. And then we have adopted, we have a policy in the housing element to look at the home hardening aspect of the building code with every code adoption now. So it'll be done each time we adopt a code. So you probably recall that last year in December, we adopted the home hardening ordinance. And at that time, there were a couple of things that were mostly technical in nature that the fire marshal wanted to include next time around. So we were looking forward and thinking about what might change. So what our consultant building official has been doing has been reviewing the latest building code that's released in the summer for every 3 years and looking at to see what's changed and how we need to change our green building ordinance and our home hardening ordinance to reflect the changes that the state is kind of catching up with us in a couple of different areas. So the town has been ahead on home hardening and green building. And so the state has moved forward a couple of steps. And so we're evaluating that and then bringing forward code amendments for the council to consider. Right now, those are anticipated to go to council in October. so that we've got a good amount of time to roll them out, and then they would go into effect in January with the new code adoption. And so we would do the same thing that we did last time if the council approves it. And for anything that has a planning application that's already in, at the time that it's adopted, we would probably vest those rights or set it some kind of date that the planning commission, that the council, I'm sorry, wants to set about who is subject to the ordinance. And then on the building permit side, as long as you submit your application before the changes go into effect, then you're under the current code. So there were issues implementation in how the rules were written related to decks and the fire resistant materials versus non-combustible materials, and which surfaces needed to fit what category. So the professionals, the experts have been working on this to try to come up with something that is implementable and still fire safe. And so I know it has a relationship to the distance above the ground. And there's some science with that about how fire spreads and collects underneath the deck surface. So I know that they've been working on it. I understood it to be a clarification and not a significant change. But I think it will be similar to what's been in effect. And I think it's a slightly more strict in one area and then a little bit less strict in another, just so that it can be more implementable. So that's the high overview that I've got, not being the building code expert myself. But if this is something the commission's interested in, we can certainly give you an update as it goes forward.
Yeah, I would appreciate updates because this is one area, even though it's not really in our jurisdiction, I get a lot of questions about, what can I use on my deck? For people, websites. It's a little difficult understanding the current code when you're just approaching the idea of, say, replacing your deck, rather than having hired a professional to figure it out for you. So it would be great to get some updates.
It is. Yeah, thank you.
And another update question. I expect we'll probably see the Stanford Terrace one more time, the wedge project. Is that correct? That will come again to ASCC?
Yes, it will definitely come to ASCC again. We are working right now on the responses to the comments from the draft EIR. There were many, many comments received. And so the professional consultants are working on those responses. And then there'll be the final EIR will come out, and then we'll go into a series of meetings that will include committee members, our committees, ASCC, the subdivision committee that you have a member on. Commissioner Wilson is the representative on the subdivision committee, and then planning commission, and then council. The schedule for that is not set yet, but that's a general outline of what will be coming.
Right. Thank you very much. Any other follow-up questions, Jane or Al?
Not for me.
All right. I'll open the public comment section of this agenda item and invite any member of the public to address us.
There's one member of the public present and they do not have their hand up.
All right. Thank you for that. I'll close the staff report agenda item. The final item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of our previous meeting, which was on May 23rd. Commissioner Wilson was not in attendance at that meeting, but I understand from Laura that procedurally she's still eligible to vote, so that we do have a quorum if we want to make a motion and either modify or accept these minutes.
They seem very short.
Yeah, they were written a little differently, a different style. It seemed like rather than focusing on the actual conversation, they were focused more just on the decisions and motions.
That's my understanding, is that now that every meeting is being recorded verbatim and those recordings are accessible, that the need for the very detailed minutes that we've seen before is not really there anymore. And Laura, is that a good characterization of why the minutes have changed in their format?
Yeah, that's certainly a part of it. The town council considered an item to change the format of the minutes for the town. So previously, the council, planning commission, and ASCC had detailed kind of summary minutes, not verbatim, but a summary of the discussion. So the council considered that a few months ago and made the decision to switch to what are called action minutes. And so this is a pretty standard best practice in local government these days, reflecting that the minutes should include the actions that are taken and not the discussion that leads up to the actions. And so we're working on, just kind of formalizing or deciding for sure exactly what format the action minutes are going to take for this body. What we plan on doing is adding on the website, adding all of the Zoom recordings and then putting the timestamp in the ASCC meetings so that anyone could go and watch the ASCC meeting, the portion that they wish to watch. And so that's the plan right now based on the council's direction. We're in the middle of implementing those steps, but it should be soon when we've got all of the videos posted for ASCC and people can able to easily go back and forth between video and the action minutes.
That sounds good.
Yeah, thanks for that update.
Lot less typing as well for somebody.
Yeah, well, we have a transcription service that was creating all of those summary minutes. So it's less for the commissions to review and less that we would have to go back and correct. And then we've got everything on the Zoom recordings.
We can't really object to anything because it's on video, so we can't really make changes because it's recorded.
I mean, the minutes are supposed to reflect what happened at the meeting. And sometimes when there's summary minutes, there's some, a person is trying to interpret what was being said when you're doing summary minutes.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the downsides. And so the action minutes, we can be sure are literally the actions that were taken. And if people are looking for the additional color, then the video can do that.
Right. Okay, before we make a motion and take a vote, I'll invite any members of the public in attendance to make a comment on this agenda item. Raise your hand electronically if you'd like to do so.
There are no members of the public on Zoom, but there's a member of the public in the room that would like to speak.
Very good.
Please
I'd
just
like to
turn that
recognize
microphone
Nicholas
on.
Targ.
I'm Nicholas Targ. I'm the member of the Planning Commission joining you for this evening session. I only want to say what a pleasure it is to see you in person, what a difference the feel makes. And it is always excellent to see your thoughtful expertise in action. And I can only note how very busy our planning director and planning staff has been. Thank you very much. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Targ. All right. I'll entertain a motion regarding acceptance of the meeting.
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
Thank you, Al. Jane, will
Am I
you
allowed
second?
to second?
I'll second that motion. But you are allowed to vote.
Okay, so I'll vote.
So let's all take a vote and we'll let Laura do a roll call vote.
Great, thank you.
See, I remembered this time.
Got it. Commissioner Sill,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
and Chair Ross.
Aye. Thank you, Laura. Okay, that concludes final item on our agenda and therefore concludes our meeting as well. So we'll adjourn until our next meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And
Thank you.
Night, everyone. Thanks.
Yeah.
Everyone, good night.
Thank you. All right, good night.